Rise America.
Now, US President Joe Biden, for the first time, has referred to Russia's invasion in Ukraine as a genocide. Speaking in Iowa at an event about steps his administration was taking to staunch rising fuel costs because of the war, Biden termed the conflict, which has seen Russia carry out atrocities against Ukrainian civilians, as a genocide. He reinforced that viewpoint before boarding Air Force One to return to Washington, D.C. Biden has previously stated that he did not believe Russia's actions amounted to genocide, as Ukrainian government officials have argued, but rather were war crimes.
Mr. President, what made you use the word genocide today?
Mr. President, have you seen enough evidence to declare genocide in Ukraine, sir? Yes, I called it genocide because it's become clearer and clearer that Putin is just trying to wipe out the idea of being Ukraine. And the evidence is mounting. It's different than it was last week. The more evidence is coming out of literally the horrible thing that the Russians have done in Ukraine. And we're going to only learn more and more about the devastation. And we'll let the lawyers decide internationally whether or not it qualifies. But it sure seems that way to me.
What more did you learn?
Well, for more on these stories, let's now cross live to Washington, D.C., where we're joined by Rise US Correspondent Eric Ham. Eric, good to see you. Now, let's start with the Brooklyn shooting. Now, the suspect has been arrested. Now, I understand in the last few moments has been charged for a federal terror offense. Can you tell us more?
Yeah, that's right. In fact, we have just, there's an ongoing press conference now taking place at One Police Plaza, where a number of people are discussing not only the apprehension of this individual, but also the range of charges that are also being attached to him as well. In fact, we are told that those charges could actually bring a life sentence in prison if, in fact, convicted on all of these charges. We do know that he was actually apprehended because of Crime Stoppers. There were two tips that actually led to his arrest. His arrest actually came with no consequence. There were two Manhattan police officers who actually apprehended the individual and brought him into custody. Now we are told that they are still going through the tranche of evidence that they have on the individual to try to get a greater understanding as to why he actually did committed this horrible crime that took place yesterday.
Now, is it too early to ascertain, it might be dealt with at the current press conference, why yesterday it was said it was not being dealt with as terrorism, but today being charged with a terror offense?
We don't know the full details as to why, but I do believe one of the reasons that is now on the table is because law enforcement officials have had an opportunity to actually go through his YouTube videos, and these videos go back months and months, and where he has actually talked about there needs to be more mass shootings and there needs to be more of them taking place and more people need to be killed. And so I think looking at just his body of evidence that actually led to this shooting, I think now law enforcement officials are getting a greater understanding and a greater idea as to why he did what he did. And so I think because we're seeing all of that now, you're now seeing the idea of terrorism at least on the table. If, in fact, terrorism charges will actually stick, that will not be determined until he is actually formally charged.
And now let's turn the attention to Ukraine. Now, I understand the US has announced some new funding. Can you tell us more?
Yeah, in fact, this is following on to some information that we reported just last night, where we got information from our sources inside the White House that the president was planning to announce a $750 million military aid package to Ukraine. Well, today, President Biden spoke this morning with President Zelensky for about an hour from 11:41 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to 12:39 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And in that phone call, President Biden committed to providing an additional $800 million in military aid to Ukraine. Part of that aid, Dan, is actually going to be these T-117 tanks that were initially planned to go to Afghanistan forces prior to the dismantling of the Afghan government. They were supposed to go to Afghanistan. Those tanks that are now part of this package that is going to be going to the Ukrainian forces. as part of this new package that the president announced today when he spoke with President Zelensky.
Now, President Biden has been in the news because he's called the atrocities genocide, but French President Emmanuel Macron has refused to use the same term. During an interview earlier, he said that he wouldn't use that term, and that both Ukraine and Russia were brothers. I mean, would that infuriate the White House, or would that not seem to be such of an issue?
Well, again, I think what we're seeing here is an escalation of terms being used by President Biden, and we don't know the reason why he's continuing to escalate. Already we have heard him say that President Putin needs to be removed from power, and now he's calling what's taking place on the ground in Ukraine genocide. But again, the president has made clear when he said this last night that these are his terms, they're not scientific terms, and they're not U.S. policy. This is just what he believes. And so what we're seeing here is the president once again speaking from his own heart about what he believes is actually happening on the ground, but also following up with policy by being very aggressive and attempting to try to get Ukraine additional resources.
Now, there's been more accusations of chemical weapons, more NATO countries not making it clear what would happen if they have been used. I mean, the mayor of Mariupol again earlier said that they were definitely used. The UK have said, the UK Defence Secretary saying or refusing to say what would happen if it was confirmed. Is there any more clarity on this situation?
None whatsoever. In fact, right now we know that Admiral Kirby is providing a press briefing on the $800 million and what will be part of that package. But as far as what it means and how this will play out in terms of what the U.S. is planning to do, if in fact it is confirmed that chemical weapons have been used or are going to be used, we still do not know what the U.S., the EU, or the NATO response will be.
Now, we've heard Janet Yellen earlier saying basically that countries would almost suffer some consequences if they were not policing Russian sanctions that the Western countries have rolled out. Is there any more clarity on what her statement meant?
No, what we do know, however, is that the United States has already implemented sanctions on key entities and countries that have attempted to try to get around those sanctions. In fact, we have seen that actually play out with Iran. But as far as what countries she's signaling out or addressing, that we don't know. We do know that President Biden, as well as other members of his administration, continue to keep tabs on and speak directly to China. There is, again, growing concern that China could get off the sidelines and be more productive in helping Russia. So far, that has not happened. And we do know that the United States is applying pressure not only to countries that remain on the sidelines in terms of not providing help, but to ensure that other countries do not provide support to Russia.
Well, Eric, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you very much indeed for your analysis this evening. Eric Ham, Rise US Correspondent in Washington, D.C.
Rise America.